welcome today. Just a quick overview for our NDMTSS trainings for 23-24. Again, this is designed just simply to give you enough information and then leave some time for questions and answers, or we've got members of our NDMTSS team here that can help you to determine maybe what your next steps are for your school this year. And so we just want to make sure that you have this in a timely manner. We did a couple of these in the spring. But again, we know everybody's ready when they're ready, and hopefully you had a really great summer and your schools are in good shape with fully staffed teaching and custodial and bus drivers. I heard we just got done with a governing board meeting that those might be the challenging areas this year. But again, I think one of the things about NDMTSS that our MTSS in general that I love is it really is about making sure that we're making really good decisions about allocating our resources. And it really has to do with what are the goals that we have for our school, and then how are we going to make that happen. And sometimes this is where the innovation has to happen, and how we allocate resources really drives that, right? So when we think about resources, it's time, it's money, it's people, and the combination of all those decisions that I'm sure a lot of you have to make because you're the ones that have to make them. So again, I will just ask real quick before we get started, if you would please change your name so that you have your name and then your school right after it. Like mine says Jennifer Glasheen. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning here at SEEK, and I lead the NDMTSS work here in the state. And then the second piece is if you have the opportunity to put your camera on, we really just would love to have the ability to put a face and a name together. So again, this is just to make sure that you have some familiarity. So I'm just gonna toss it over to Kayla first, and Brandy, and then Cheryl. And these are my NDMTSS teammates here. So Kayla, you want to introduce yourself and tell them where you live and your role?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kayla Durkin. This is my 4th year working for the Central Regional Education Association. I am out of the Bismarck office. So if anyone is in the central region from Canada down to South Dakota in that central region, we're all here to support you, but I'm really here to support you if you're in that area. And so primarily work with the academic side, but we dabble in a little bit of everything.
Oh, thanks, Kayla. Brandy?
I'm Brandy Euland, and I work for SEEK. This will be my 3rd year. I'm a professional learning specialist and NDMTSS person. I don't even know what I am, but anyway, I work mostly with behaviors. But Cheryl and Kayla and I all work together really closely. So whether you're Bismarck or Minot or Fargo or anywhere in between, you probably have seen her name somewhere.
There you go. Thanks, Brandy. And she's actually in my office, so you know why she didn't have to unmute. She's just sitting across the desk. So I wanted you to see her face. Cheryl.
Okay. I'm Cheryl Hogarth, and I am also in the SEEK office in Fargo. I didn't realize this, but they posted I had my 5th anniversary working with Jen. So that was kind of exciting. I went, well, time flies. But anyway, I am in the SEEK office and with NDMTSS, kind of focused mainly on the academic. But as Brandy said, we all work together here, Jen, Kayla, Brandy, and I. So reach out to any one of us at any time. I'm probably the one who's been sending you an extra few emails lately. So yeah, reach out. Let us know what you need. We are here.
Great. Thank you. All right. So in the room, it looks like we've got Robbie Joe and Larry are in Max. Welcome today. And then we got Brody at Tioga High School. Hi, Brody. And then Christina, you're in Beulah Elementary. Very good. And Teresa, nice to see you down in Milner. And AJ is in Alexander, and familiar face, David Nowatzki up in Grand Forks. I see Judy there too. So some familiar faces. Nice to see you guys. And then Stephanie, I think you are up in, where's Stephanie at? I don't remember, but I should know. Stephanie Nelson. And then
summer brain's going. So
that's okay. And then Amber is in Beulah also. And then Kaya, I don't know where you are from. So if you have a chance and you can change and just add, rename yourself and add your school, that would be great. So welcome today. We're going to do a quick overview. And like I said, we'll do question and answer. And Stephanie, thank you, Valueberg. Yep. And you can put it in the chat as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you a quick, or we're going to go through a quick PowerPoint, just kind of high level MTSS, and then get into the weeds of questions that you have and how to, if you are interested in learning how to sign up for some of our trainings this year. So, and if you have questions at any time, go ahead and use that chat or give me a reaction or something that would say, hey, stop. I have a question. So, all right. Brandy, you can see my screen. Okay. And from the beginning. All right, again, what we're going to talk about today is just our NDMTSS opportunities and
It's not a presentation yet.
oops. Is that moving?
Is it on a different screen, Jen?
Oh, it did. It popped over. I don't know why. Let me unshare. I love my multiple screens and sometimes it pops over to a different spot. Can you see it there now?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, and then right pictures on there.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, as we okay, this is our definition. It's not moving. There we go. This is our definition. I'm going to give you just a moment just to read through it. I'm sure you've seen it in different places. But as you read through this, I just want you to kind of soak in the different parts because it's a jam-packed definition. So I'm going to just pause for a second and let you read through this definition. So as you read through that, I'm going to ask you just to consider what's the most important part of that definition for you and why you may be interested in learning a little bit more about the supports that we can provide through the North Dakota multi-tiered system of support. What is the piece or what is the word or phrase that pops out to you? And could you just put that in the chat? Word or phrase? Okay, we've got a lot of people saying match to student need, interventions match to student needs. Anybody else? Make decisions about changes in instruction or goals. Match to student need. Very good. So as you think about this data, I appreciate that. Like I said, we spent some time with this definition several years ago now, back in 2017, when we were really trying to make sure that we were being clear about what we were talking about and the opportunities to support schools. But I think that these questions that we just posed, as far as what word or word stands out to you in the definition and how does it relate to your goals, you know, when we have to unpack this, I highlighted the definition now, so it's the same definition, but typically when we ask this question of schools, what we find out is that there are different reasons why people are coming to us and wondering about the training. And I will tell you my own personal word or phrase here that really is the crux of this, is this one of the smallest words, and that is all. Because when we talk about systems of support or multi-tiers of system of support, all of the things that you do in your schools, all of those things support or are supposed to support our students academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally in what they're doing. And so for me, sometimes we want to make sure that we know what we're talking about here. So that's why we have our definition. You can see we've kind of took the providing high quality instruction and intervention. That's all about the teaching, right? And the engagement of kids, matched to student needs. Some kids go slower, faster. Some kids need more practice. Some kids need more time and intensity. And we have to be able to have some valid and reliable ways to determine that. We have to know how to use our data wisely, not only to monitor progress in our instruction and our interventions, but also if we have to change anything based on what's working or not. And then the other thing is, again, as I mentioned earlier, using that data to also allocate our resources. And again, as we face some of our crunches right now in the challenges that we have in education, especially in our state, we have to start thinking about how do we set up our systems to be able to do the work, even if we're short a teacher, even if we're, we've only got 2 paras, only if we, what if we're title, what if we're not? Those are all those things that we want to think about, but using the data and saying, we're going to set up our systems to be as effective as possible. In my opinion, this is a continuous improvement process. This is, you all have systems in your school. We're not saying we're going to start at way back at, square one and move you forward 20 steps this year. This is about wherever you are, let's audit your system. Let's figure out what you have in place and what's working, and then let's build on that. Okay. So as we go through this, the other part of this definition that we always need to take time to do is we have what it is not, so that we clear up any misconceptions. And this slide really, you may have heard some of these things. This is not, any sort of a condemnation or anything like that, but we really need to get clear about this, because this is not a time or a place or a program. We don't have some kids that are MTSS. If we really truly mean all, this is an all situation, because tier 1 instruction is the place where most of our learning in our schools happens, right? And that is tier 1. So tier 1 is part of our system of support. So it's not just for some students. Kids can't be RTI'd or MTSS'd, or you can't test in and test out. We use our data to drive instruction always. So some kids may need more intensive support in my chemistry class versus in a science class or in a English class or reading, depending upon the different levels and how sophisticated our systems are. But it's not some people's job to do MTSS in our schools. It's everybody's job to engage in our system of support for all kids. So this is an all hands on deck thing. We do spend a lot of time as we audit our systems. We know you're doing school, right? We know you're doing the core instruction and those kinds of things, but we also, as we audit systems and we talk about the different components, we do find opportunities to add in some of that intensification or to strengthen our core instruction or to look at some things. But again, this cannot be done by a small group of educators, although we do use teams, leadership teams to get these conversations going, to make decisions, to do some of that. So it's not just about reading, it's not just about math, it's not necessarily content specific, but again, we are driven by the data. So that is some of the data that we have readily available that we use all the time in our schools. So as we talk about this, then keep getting stuck on my slides. we further break this down. So again, just to reiterate these different pieces of your system that you already have in place, we talk a lot about these 5 essential components that drive this continuous improvement process. And so we have our 5 essential components of assessment. What information do we know about what we're trying to achieve? We look at the processes that we have in place for database decision making, and we want to make those very clear to everybody in the system so that it's not one person making a decision and we can't replicate it and we can't know if how or why it's working or not working. So we spend a lot of time in those 2 areas in terms of using that information that we have and making sure that we have the right information to match to student need, which you guys all or a lot of you said in the from the definition conversation is one of those really important pieces for you. Then that helps us to make the instructional decisions. So again, in that multi-tier instruction, we will talk about tier 1, which is core instruction, universal for everyone. And then also tier 2, which is strategic. And that's where our interventions, where we layer on, not only are you getting the core, but you're getting some more. And then we also talk about our most intensive intervention for our tier 3 interventions. So again, instruction, intervention, for me, those 2 terms are the same because it is instruction. It's all instruction. It's just the intensity or the dosage or the strength of the actual instruction that we're talking about. Then we also, especially during our trainings, talk a lot about the infrastructure and support mechanisms that you have in place in your school. And what we mean by that is that's every decision that you're making in terms of, again, personnel, schedules, assessment calendars, assessment tools, curriculum materials, intervention materials, what else? Just all of the training and the PD and the supports, coaching that you may need to do to make sure that things are implemented to a high level of fidelity. So infrastructure and supports really put this systemic focus on making sure that all of this work gets put in place and it gets documented and it gets communicated in such a way that it can be replicated and continuously improved. So that's the infrastructure and support pieces of our essential component there. And then the fidelity and the evaluation is another data piece that then circles us back, because not only did we do all the work of matching to student needs, but we also want to make sure that it's either working, and if it's not working, why? And so we want to know, was it done well? And also, is it having the outcomes that we want? So those 2 pieces close our loop. We put this bottom bar here with MTSS implementation because we know a lot about implementation science that will say, if you want an innovation to work, there are some very key pieces. And so all of our trainings are built around that. We've built in some support mechanisms from a state level through our NDMTSS process that will allow us to provide you guys as schools with some of that support. And so we just want you to know that along the line of all of these essential components, that implementation piece is a crucial piece. And that's where we know any of us struggle with any kind of innovation that we're having. So again, we could use a lot of different examples there, but if we want to get really good at golf, we could put a lot of different things in place that would make us get better at golf faster than if we didn't have them in place. So that's just one example. So as we go through, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we have within our North Dakota multi-tiered system of support both an academic component and a behavioral component, because we know that these 2 have the interactions in how our kids do in schools every day, how our teachers are able to navigate, what's happening. But you can see the similarities here is that it still is core instruction, and that's for everybody. And that's about prevention of risk. And then as we use our data to identify students who might be at risk in either one of these or both of these areas, we start to have fewer kids in each of the tiers, or that would be our hope. Because again, we're gonna hit the most, and most of our resources can and probably should already in your systems go towards that tier 1 core instruction. But then we have to know what we need to do to get more kids back on track as soon as possible. So this is a prevention focused, and make sure that we are using our time, money, and resources as efficiently as possible. So again, I told you about implementation science. This is kind of how we think about it. Once we know that we have these effective practices, we need to know how do we get to the outcomes. So we do focus a lot on that implementation part, like I said, and also how it's going to happen, and looking at our context and looking at both our teams. Do we have the right people in the decision-making process? How replicable can we be? And then how do we continuously improve so that we're seeing the results? Because if we're using evidence-based instruction and intervention, and those processes, those materials, those tools, that's saying that if done in a certain way, you should expect this kind of result. And if that study has been done with a group of kids that looks similar to our own from our schools, then you should expect, if we're going to be driven by evidence-based, that you should get similar results. So we just keep working on that system and keep working on shoring that up to see the results. Some of our core beliefs within our NDMTSS work is that if we do this well, and we have really effective systems, that then we're going to be supporting not only our school leaders, but also our teachers, who are essentially right there with kids every day, creating those environments where students can learn and improve. We also know that our schools then are going to have an alignment with their purpose and direction, which again is language you know from Cognia, that you have those high expectations and your shared beliefs, your culture of learning, whatever those components are within your own schools, and that we are making those best resource allocations and decisions to create equitable access. So again, those are kind of some of our core tenets that we believe. And again, back to the implementation piece, the demands of your time, we know in your schools and in your roles is pretty high. And so if we can help and support and prompt your teams, your leadership teams, to be focused on the right work and answering the right questions, and then have some support to be able to, take a look at any of our obstacles or barriers that come into play, and tell you how other schools across the state have addressed these, or some of the things to consider. That's really where we feel like we make a lot of progress together, because a lot of schools have been involved with this over the years. So again, developing those plans for ongoing learning, as creating those structures, processes, ongoing evaluation and review of implementation is a lot of what we focus on. Within our training programs, you guys, we have built our work around some of the work of the National MTSS Center. So again, this is kind of one of those technical assistance centers that is funded at the federal level, but a lot of great resources. So again, you can see the MTSS for Success website there down in the corner, but we kind of have 3 phases of implementation that our NDMTSS trainings aligned to. And so the blue is kind of that phase 1, where we're assessing what's going on in our own systems, what components are strong, what components need some strengthening, and we do a lot of planning and preparation. So in that first year, both on the academic and the behavioral side, we spend a lot of time pushing and asking and questioning and guiding. What are those questions we need to answer, and what does it actually look like in our schools? And then we get into phase 2, which is the green, where we start taking those plans and we put them into action. And we really are implementing or monitoring how it's going. We're building on that, we're improving, and we may spend a bit of time there. Again, big kinds of changes that happen in schools typically take 3 to 5 years. We have a 3-year training plan within NDMTSS. But we are going to get you to a point where we hope that by year 3 and beyond, that you have some spots where you are either kind of cycling back into the green with just the continuous improvement process, or that you have some other pieces that can be sustained and can be scaled so that you are, that this can become just the way your system works. So again, there's a lot of pieces that you already have going on, but we want to make sure that we're looking at where your school in particular. So it does become kind of a personalized plan, but we have conversations about each piece. So we learn from each other, but we also have some guidance that can help. So you've seen this. I attached the incorrect one yet first, and then I sent the right one. So does everybody have the one with the links that actually you can click on? If anybody doesn't have that, I could maybe have Kayla drop it in the chat, but this is what we call our roadmap. And you can see in the gray boxes here, you can see that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And again, we use the same language, the plan for success, the implement, and the sustain and expand. That's the same colors, right, from this diagram. Okay, so the blue is the plan, the green is the implement, and then the orange was the sustain. So we've got our same phases. But then in the blue boxes, you can see these are our training opportunities. So the first one in phase 1 is building your system. And if you click on any of the titles of the trainings, they will take you to a link, which is an agreement. And that's kind of how you get signed up for MTSS. And it just outlines everything you want to know, right? What are the NDMTSS people going to do for us? What is the training involved? You know, we have some different trainers. We have dates. We have what's expected of the school team. And then like the actual documentation on the last page of the agreement that your superintendent has to sign off on, and you have to have your team members, and you're going to actually turn that in. So that's more of, it's a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding. So those are all attached. We tried to put as much information on here so that you had a 1-pager that you could look. But again, most of our schools start with building your system as an overview. This helps us to get you guys organized in terms of what is this really all about? Who's involved? What do we have in place in terms of, you know, just really talking about implementation and getting everybody on the same page. We always hear, we just need everybody to be on the same page. So we spend those 2 days in October together. And are those the right dates?
No, they're not.
Those are not the right
They're not.
dates. Okay, so I didn't, okay, so the one that you have is correct.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna see. This is not the correct picture. I didn't replace the picture in the PowerPoint, but the one that I sent to you should say September 19th and 20th.
Mhm.
Everybody's good with that? Okay. So again, we've tried to put all the dates and all the times and all that. So then you'll see on the left, it says 1A, then down the left, 2A in phase 2 and 3A in phase 3. So any of them with A's are academic training. So that's kind of the pathway for academics. And then on the right-hand side, they all have a B next to them. And those are our behavior trainings. Okay, starting with school-wide behavior expectations. And then we've got a year of coaching and refining that tier 1. And then we go into tier 2 towards the end of the second year, actually. Okay. So as we take a look at this, then we know that this is the piece where you may have some questions, and these are just the keys. I told you, underlining all of this is just successful implementation. So again, we want to be able to help you to determine who are the right people to get on the bus and in the right seat. So who's going to be on your team? Why is it so important? You know, this definitely is a journey. It's not a one-time we went to MTSS and we're done. And again, I've got some familiar faces even on this call today, because it's a continuous improvement. We've had teams come back if they've had significant change. in their staffing, in their leadership. Again, they are further ahead than they were when they probably went through training the first time, but as things change, we had COVID in there. I mean, things have changed and we are facing different situations. So again, that context piece that we talked about in terms of successful implementation, if all of a sudden we are not finding paras, or we are not finding teachers, or we are looking at how are we going to combine classrooms to, more effectively do second grade. And there's just all of those context things that we're always continually looking at these. And again, you may have other things that are going on. If you have a literacy grant, or you have the science of reading expectations, you've got stronger connections grant. Like, we have a lot of schools that have a lot of other things going on. So again, when we're talking about MTSS, this is all kids, this is all parts of your system. So a lot of these things start flowing in the same direction. We've got one school district right now that has a literacy grant, has a stronger connections grant. And they're just figuring out, well, we could use that resource to help with this intervention at, for grades, whatever. And then we could use the money from what we were going to use in our general fund over here. It's just, those are the fun conversations when you start really seeing people able to co-create that vision and then putting all those things in place. So as we do this, then this is what we know is going to be some of our outcomes. Successful schools, based on research, is we start to see some of these things in place in successful schools. We have strong instructional leadership. We have high expectations for achievement and success. We have effective intervention at all of our tiers and intervention programs, alignment, the assessment, the use of data, and those professional development and coaching cycles that help us. But again, it's that system-wide approach. That's why this is a system of support, not we're gonna do intervention for third graders with corrective reading. That might be a part of your system, but that's not MTSS. Okay, it's a part of your system. So if you're looking for those kinds of things, again, I put on just a little bit of a description of some of the academic and the behavioral expectation or training things that opportunities that would be probably the places to start if you were just getting into some of this work. But again, as things start to come together, you start to see that we're really focusing on all of those supports for children, and we're looking at how are they doing academically, socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and making sure that they're getting what they need. So those are the things that you said what we were talking about. Hopefully you know that you're not alone in this. I always like to put this up here because when I started, this was one of the first things that I did when I started back in 2009. I think I probably had an MTSS grant in the spring of 2010 when I started with the REA here in SEEK. But since 2014 only, we started tracking some of this training we were doing. And you can see we've had over 103 school districts and 216 schools across the state. So wherever you're located, you can kind of see some of the schools. And again, everybody's at a different point, and we have to just keep that support going. So again, that's just a different way to look at our own data. And then I will take some questions, but again, we introduced ourselves at the beginning. So Cheryl, Keela, and Brandy can also help field some questions here. And they help to get you guys signed up. The other thing I just want you to know is that we have over the last several years, especially with the support of the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, through some of our ESSER grant funding that has helped to support an expansion of our NDMTSS supports across the state. So we actually have NDMTSS liaisons in all but one of our REAs. And I think there's about 7 of us because there's a couple of us in the same SEEK area. But we do have liaisons that are spread out. So we have those folks that also come and partner with us. And in terms of the training, because they're already working with you guys in your schools. So in your own REAs. So again, I happen to be in SEEK and the director of teaching and learning here, but we cross all kinds of lines in terms of the support we provide. So I just want you to see the rest of our pictures. So Sarah McFadden is out in Dickinson area. She's an RESP. Erin Lucina is up in Devil's Lake at the NESC. Kate Anderson actually lives in Bismarck, but she works with the Western Educational Regional Cooperative out of Bismarck, or no, out of Williston. So Kate's kind of in that upper quadrant, and then Katie is in the NCEC. So hopefully these are faces that you guys are familiar with from your schools. But again, they help to serve in a capacity of a layer of support, and we have coaching calls, and we have, in addition to our training days, when they're also on site with us, to make sure that they might know other things that you're working on with them, right? And again, it's how do we put all these things together, but then we stay pretty tight knit in terms of our own group. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I just want to open it up for the kinds of questions that you might have at this point. I know I went over a lot of information, but hopefully you're in the right place. Was that what you were looking for? And then what kinds of questions might you have? Brody?
Well, October dates switching to September puts a crimp in plans because 2 building principals are both football coaches. And Tioga would be just starting the process, and to make the initial training in the middle of September, how do we work our way around that?
Okay, so those are it's a good question. So we wanted to make sure that you had the dates out in front. They're 2 days in the middle of the school year. We know that all of the trainings this year will be in Jamestown, so that's a stretch for you guys. But again, a lot of schools just determine that this is the time and the place where they got to be, and that's what we work from. So I know that it's hard for people to be away. We could certainly look at your team. I know that Cheryl and Kayla and Brandy would be able to look at the team that you have and maybe make some recommendations in terms of, you know, maybe one of them has to come and one of them can't come, but we have to have a building level principal on the team, because we know that a lot of that. Yeah.
And we have to have a SPED teacher, correct?
You need a special education person of some sort. So whether it's a unit director or a coordinator, regional coordinator, or a teacher, somebody who has that background, and then you need some general education folks and anybody else that you deem as.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
All right, thanks, Brody. Other questions? You can put it in the chat, you can ask somebody specifically, behavior, academics. Amanda, I see that you're on. I don't know if you can put your camera on. Amanda Meyer is one of our state leadership team members also. Hi, Amanda. Saw your name there. You've been in a couple of different districts, Wilton for a while as both a principal and a superintendent, and now principal in Mandan. Do you have anything, if anybody has any questions for her in terms of logistics, she could answer a lot of those questions too, or anything you want to say, I would let you do that.
I was just trying to quietly hide in the background.
Good to see you.
The only thing that comes off the top of my head is the leadership team in your building is so vitally important. So the better you can get those people engaged and make sure that they have a deep understanding of the components of MTSS, the more effective they're going to be able to lead the rest of their colleagues and get that buy-in. So if you don't have a leadership team, make sure you take time investing in getting that set up and get the right people around the table, because that is where it starts. And once you have that action plan, it really leads to your initiatives and helps get all of the extra out of the way so you can hone in and focus on what your specific goals are.
Thanks, Amanda. And that's really where that building your leadership training evolved from, is that we used to start right at 1A and 1B. We used to jump right into it, but we found that the schools that struggled missed that component of really a solid understanding of MTSS, a solid understanding of implementation and implementation science, and how to work past barriers and those kinds of things. And then the solid tier 1, and just really focusing there and saying what are the things that we're going to commit to there as we go through then the other trainings. Then we get into making some of those decisions and looking at our data and looking into our tiers and how to strengthen them. But again, we know that those first 2 days are so critical in terms of what Amanda just shared. So
Can I add one more thing, Jen?
absolutely.
There are some really smart people in your REAs, so please don't be afraid to reach out and connect with them. You don't have to wait to engage with these people until you're at one of these events. They have lots of experience in the classroom, and sometimes as principals or teachers, I'm not sure what the group's dynamic is here, but we get so stuck in our buildings that we forget that there is a network of really, really intelligent people that are working for us. So reach out and make those connections. It'll make your life a lot easier.
Thanks, Amanda. What other kinds of questions can we answer for you guys today? I know that Cheryl's been in contact with several of you.
Can you send out the PowerPoint from today?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thanks.
I'll make the correction with the right version. I'll get that done first. And I'll send the recording as well to you guys. How to get started, anything like that. If you have questions, you can call Brandy, Cheryl, Kayla. Any of them can help you with any of the things, answering any of those questions about who should I put on the team? What if we have some conflicts? What would be the best course of action? Pricing is in there. Liaisons within your area. If I mentioned that we don't have one of our areas covered, but we cover that. So again, I know we've got, we have a layer of support for that. And we have an annual conference that sometimes as you need to bring on additional people or you are ready to move in a certain area, we always design that conference in the summer, the second Monday after Memorial Day every year. So next year it'll be, I think it's I don't even know, trying to check for me quick, 9th, maybe around that second week after Memorial Day. And again, that's just to extend, sometimes that allows you to bring your team or even additional people from your schools into some of the things too. So
10, 11, 12.
10, 11, 12, June. So we'll stay on. Otherwise, if you have specific questions for anybody, we can put you together with people even in a breakout room, or if you want to stay on. But that's all we have for today. If you have questions, let us know. We're here to help.